establishing a logical connection to tables.
Okay, so his question is, how do I determine whether I use a primary key, is that what you said, or a linking table? The answer is relatively simple. When I link two tables, and I'm not even going to give them names today, what kind of relationships can they have? One to what?
One to many.
One to many. Many to many.
One to one.
One to one. Okay. If it's a one-to-many relationship, the primary key from the parent, that's the one side, becomes the foreign key or the linking key, linking field, on the child side. So I use the primary key if it's a one-to-many relationship. And I take the parent's key, put it in the child to link the two tables together. If it is a many-to-many relationship, I can't do that because which key do I put where? Who's the parent here? There is no parent, right? It's just a bunch of children playing in a playground, sort of, unsupervised. So I have no key here that I can transfer back and forth. The solution to that one is a linking table. Is that the term used? I had grand plans for rereading those two chapters this morning. Other people had other ideas. So I haven't reread them, so if I'm a little fuzzy on what's in those two chapters, I apologize. But if it's a many-to-many relationship, the way you resolve it is you put a linking table. It's a whole table in here to resolve that problem. Is that the question? Cool. Andy?
All right. How do you implement your database structure in like an RDBMS, like the RDBMS program? And what are some of the programs that you would use?
Okay. How do I implement the design? We're going to do that. Right? You're going to have plenty of chances. So the good news is we design it. Then we open our RDBMS, Relational Database Management System. And you learn how to use that tool, like Access. Right? You're an Access expert because I know, because I trained you. You use Access, and what did they say in the book? The book said, create a table. You want to do that. Add a field. Cool. How do we know which field? The design is going to tell us. That's part of our design process. When you read my notes, you'll see a little later, step 6, step 7, we figure out which fields go in what tables. So you're going to have a design. You go into that program. You build the tables from your design. You fill the fields from your design. Your design will also include all the linking fields. It will also include all the field integrity stuff, and it'll do all that stuff. Which RDBMS's Access is one, Relational Database Management System. Access is one. The other one that we will use here is called MySQL. And it's just barely a system. It's actually more just a database. It's not a relational database management system. The system that we'll use is called MySQL Workbench, I believe. So MySQL is a database. MySQL Workbench is a program that we can slap on top of that so we can look around in there. That's what we'll use. We'll do that just before break, probably.
So then that workbench can like use.
Be like what?
Use. Describe it.
More than that. It does everything. Workbench does pretty much everything that Access does. Doesn't include reports and forms and stuff like that, but it does allow you to take a look at fields that are in the tables, that are in the databases. So the workbench is our way to graphically look inside that database like Access. Joni.
What are some examples of validation tables?
Validation tables, okay? Yesterday in my systems class, they picked a project, my systems implementation class, not the analysis class, sorry, systems implementation. They picked a project, that's what we do in that class. It's called a capstone course. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, looking forward to your spring 2016. Should have hoverboards and flying cars by then too, right? It is 2016, it's time for that stuff. What's going on? In that class, you pick a project, and we start from the bottom up and we build it, usually for a nonprofit. This year, the project they picked is for Wisconsin Lions Camp, because it's an organization I've been working with, and they need some upgrades to their software. And they have campers. And after a while, the campers get assigned to cabins. Now let's take a look at that relationship. Do a little practice here while we're talking about it. A cabin has how many campers? Many. A camper is in how many cabins? One. This is part of what we're going to be doing next week. If you listen very carefully to what I just did, I said one, even though this says campers and this says cabins, I said one cabin. You always start with the word one when you try to figure out these ones and M's here. Always start with the word one. One cabin has how many campers? Many. Okay. Then you do it the other way. One camper has how many cabins? One. Or is in how many cabins? One. So this is a one-to-many relationship. If I'm creating a form, I might have a combo box here, right? For cabin. What cabin did I assign to this camper? This is a form now, not a table. It's a combo box. I need to fill that, right? From where? From here. It's going to help me validate that I don't put in a cabin that doesn't exist. If I ask for the woodchuck's cabin, there is no woodchuck's cabin. How do I do that? How do I know that? By using a validation table. A validations table, in general, its only purpose in life is to make sure that you don't enter something in this box that doesn't exist. In this case, the cabin has more information in it, so it's used as a regular table, but it can also be a validation table to ensure that we don't pick a camper, pardon me, a cabin that doesn't exist. We also have camps. When we assign a camper to a camp, we want to make sure it's one of the camps that exists. So validation tables are simply used to help ensure that the data we enter is accurate. Validation, right? Make sure it's good. It's a lookup table is another way people have described it. I have a few of those, but I tend to, if it's not a table, I often hard code it into code. If they add one more thing to that list, then I'll change my code. If you put a lookup table in for everything, you can have thousands of tables that never change. It's a design decision. Trevor.
A lot of the steps in the process involve lots of reviews, and I understand that's likely best practice versus any common practice.
Yeah, both. Interviews are a best practice. That's your question, right? Is it a best practice? Or
No,
just a common?
understanding that it is a best practice.
Is it?
Is it in your experience any common? Does it actually happen?
It's very hard when you're designing a new system, and in this case, it's not even new. It's very hard for me to remember how all this stuff works. I've been working on it for 15 years without talking to the experts. I think Karen had a question a little later. It's like, man, all these interviews, and then bring the user back in, and bring the user back in, and bring the user back in. Well, they have real jobs. There's something to do. Yes. So your job, systems analyst, now we're in a different class, database designer. Your job is to minimize those interviews as much as possible, but you can't get by without. You could use questionnaires instead, where you write down all your questions, and then you send it to them, and they fill it out at their leisure. When they have some spare time, instead of when you schedule a meeting. But there's nothing like all of us being in a room with a whiteboard going, here's what I'm seeing. They go, no. And then they help you fix it, and then you say, really? And you go, yeah, and you just adjust, and then you get done with it, hopefully. What I like to do is have a pretty intense interview session, depending on the size of the project, 2-3 hours, where I try to gather as much information as I can. And then I shift to email. And then at some point, in the systems class, they'll say, you need to bring them back into here and see your progress. At some point, I might have prototypes ready to go. I've shared these, and this is called, I don't know if we talked about it yet, an entity Entity relationship diagram. This is why I don't write stuff on the board. I've forgotten how to write. ERD. What's an entity?
Subject.
It's a what?
Subject.
Subject, but it's on your worksheet. What's an entity also known as? What do you see on the board? What are those boxes? Tables. An entity is another name for a table. But we can't call it a table relationship diagram because then it's a turd. That's no fun. That's why we have to make up a new word called entity that's an ERD, ERD. Entity relationship diagram. Shows the relationships between our tables. I would share that with my users if they're willing, if they have the time. Because they can kind of figure that out. And actually, most of them, their eyeballs get big and they go, wow, I never really thought of it that way. Look at all those relationships. They can kind of figure these things out. If it confuses them too much, then I try to explain it, and if they're all glassy-eyed, then I go, okay, good, let's move on. The next time when I really want to get users involved is when I start creating prototypes. Here's what the screen's going to look like. A lot of times what they miss here, they'll see on the screen, where's the box where I fill in the nickname for the camper. Remember you ever mentioned, oh, I know I mentioned it. I'd like to record all my meetings someday. I never do that. But no, I mentioned, doesn't matter, it's not there, now we add. Prototypes. So, answer your question, yeah, I do interviews. I try to do a mass meeting if I can. Keep them to a minimum. Be very organized, knows like exactly what I want to get done. The first one, pretty unorganized. Tell me about this thing. What is it supposed to do? Get as much information as I can. And then I try to do emails. And with an email that's once a week thing, as I get questions, I list them. And if I get to the point where I can't go on until I get these answers, then I email them. And they answer when they have time. So Karen's right. We got to watch it. We can't just abuse these users. One of the things you're going to learn about in systems class is somebody's going to present it in my class, the Agile systems development technique. I don't know if it's a technique, it's a version of the systems development lifecycle called Agile. There, the users get involved even more. If that happens, that means you have the authorization from some supervisor to take this person as long as you need. Build a new system. We got to have it in 2 months. No, I can't call that person every week. I need them there every day, just about. Or maybe once a week. Who knows? But if you're doing some of the more advanced, high-paced, rapid, right? There was a rapid application development technique. If you're using those, the users are even more involved. And the users / owners, the people who are paying for that, they got to understand it. And they usually do because they want this new web app or this new mobile app in 3 months. Oh my God. Okay, let's go. Give me some experts. Add them to my team. But I need them over there. Okay, 6 months. I know, here you go. Take them. Or, okay, 6 months. A lot of times your owners, your customers, your users don't understand that time-feature relationship. It's just programming, right? Volker said SMOP. It's just programming. No, it's not. This is the stuff. The SMOP, the building the access database that Andy asked about, that, yeah, that's easy. But the design, make sure we got it right, the requirements. Once the design is pretty fixed, then yeah, I don't need those users so much anymore. Go back to work. We'll give you the finished product because if you told us everything we need to know by looking at prototypes, looking at the design requirements, if you gave us everything we need, we should be able to go at that point. So it's another one of those, there's no straight answer, but it varies based on every project. But I try to minimize them, whatever that means. What do I do on your question? Eric, you got one? John?
My kind of question was like when they're talking about like the different users, like the points of users.
Okay.
If like you get your like base views and then later they come up with a different view, how difficult is it to have like the next year start over?
Depends on whether there's new data involved. If they've forgotten the piece here, like, oh my God, there's a phone number in the cabin. Then it gets a little more complicated because I have to update the database. Then I have to update, we're in programming logic, maybe today, probably closer to next week, we're going to talk about the 3-tier model in more detail. You have to update the data component. You have to update the business class. And then I can finally get to the form and put a text box in there. If it's just, I don't like the order of these text boxes, well, that's easy. But if there's new data involved, I'm going all the way back in the chain of design saying, oops, forgot this. Okay, I put it in here, but then it cascades and falls into all these other places. So it kind of depends. Now, when you're talking about a view, you're talking about one of these forms, right? Is that what you envision?
Yeah.
Okay. We can show those to users. But for me, that doesn't happen until this 10th step that you're reading for Tuesday, until that's done. My database design is done. I like to go through the database first because if my data is wrong, my business class is going to be wrong, my form is going to be wrong, and sooner or later somebody's going to figure it out. So I like to have the data as locked down as I can. Doesn't mean they don't forget stuff or go, oh, I remember I thought about this 3 months ago. It'd be really cool if we can add this. I talked to my boss. She said, yes, let's do it. Can you do that? Of course I can. 6 months. Add 2 weeks. Add $1,000. $1,000 for one little text box? No. Text box, business class, data model, database, and I probably ought to update my entity relationship diagram and my data dictionary too, because those are very valuable tools when we're done. That's why it's $1,000. Plus, I don't come cheap. Good question. Jess? Good question. Who do I interview? Yeah, the systems analyst is usually involved in that process. What you don't want to do is interview just supervisors, because they think they know what their people do, but they kind of know from a distance. You're better to get the hands dirty interview with the person who's in there really doing this stuff. And I think, and guys help me out here, which approach was it that we talked about in systems? Maybe one of you did the research, where we don't treat the people as a position. It's this actual person. It's not a student. What does a student want? It's what does Miguel want? Which approach was that?
I think that's agile.
Sounds like okay. I was going to guess agile. Right. Where we look at the actual people. Who's going to be using this form? When Lions Camp, there's only 6 people who use this. So I can grab the one who uses it the most and say, that's who I'd like to talk to, and can I do that? Well, now in January, the answer is maybe. In March, they're 2 weeks away from the first, or 2 months away from the first camp. The answer is no. They're busy. And then my answer is, okay, well, then you don't get this until September. And they go, because we don't want it this summer. It's going to mess up our life. Right? Not everything is needed tomorrow. Lions Camp, we're building this process. They don't think they quite realize what I told them we're going to do. And maybe they're scared to death. You're going to do this now? No. No. First of all, it's going to take us 5 months to build it. And then they're right in the meat of summer camp. And there's no way they have time to deal with this nonsense. I'm not even going to put it on their plate. I'll wait till September when I don't have time. Probably their life and my life are exact out of sync. Steve.
I think you answered the question. Never mind.
Okay. Did I answer yours? I already forgot it. What systems analysts, who do we interview? Okay, yeah. I prefer the people who are going to use it. A lot of times the people with the money want to be involved. That's fine. Sit over there. And if you have a concern, let us know. But you probably don't know. But, okay, come on. Now, I get all the details. Who's filling out that form, and how they want it to look like, and what's the order they usually fill in the data, what are they used to? That kind of stuff. But then at the end, somebody wants reports out of this, right? The information. All these classes tie together. I'm talking systems, I'm talking programming, I'm talking art. See why I put this here? It works really good. It all ties together. It has to. At some point, somebody wants information out. That's probably that supervisor. This person who enters stuff day to day, changes data, they probably don't want to run a report at the end of the week or the end of the month. But the supervisor now needs reports, and so I talk to them separately about, okay, what reports do you need? When that happens, this is another question. What's more important? Do we capture the data or do we generate the reports? Well, we can't generate the reports without the data, so I got to capture first. Then I can work on reports, or in parallel, maybe got enough bodies that can work in parallel. Really old concept now, I think. It's called the mythical man month. The mythical man month. The more people I throw in a project, the faster we can get it done. We're behind in this project. We've been working on it for 9 months. Let's add these 3 geniuses to the project. That'll speed it up. They're 9 months out of the loop. How long is it going to take them to get up to speed? Well, they're geniuses, 2 hours. Maybe. But the more people I have, the more communications involved, the more supervisions involved. Sometimes adding more bodies just makes it worse. So the answer is don't get behind, I guess. Or have too many people. That ain't never happens. Never happens. Do you have a question?
Oh, I was just wondering how many like interviews would it usually take to have an efficient design?
Minimum 1. Gotta have 1 to get some information. For me, there's usually another at the prototype stage.
Because wouldn't there usually be at least 3? Because then you have your base to start when you have no idea what
Right.
you want first. And the second, after you have your prototype, and the third one would be like when you think you pretty much have it.
That's not bad, except for one thing. The second one is not the prototype. The second one, here's my database design. All right. I like to show them this, but what I've done lately, if it's not huge, is I have prototypes ready for these. Here's what I see the screens looking like. And they're just empty shells with text boxes and combo boxes and radio buttons, but there's no code. Because if the data's not right, it's easy for me to fix the shell, right? Because there's no code. But once the code gets involved, then things get ugly. So at least 2.
Just get the database first, correct? And then once you have all the information.
Volker's philosophy. Agile says, no, we don't need the database correct either. Let's do the prototypes, because once the prototypes are correct, you can figure out the data from the prototypes. I just have trouble doing prototypes without data.
It's either to correct like a whole bunch of code after.
That's what I'm trying to avoid. So I find data works best for me, but Agile is now leaning more toward, give me a prototype screen. What's the first screen you want to see? Oh, it has this stuff on. Okay. Throw that together maybe while they're in the room. Because how long does it take to throw stuff on a form? They go, can you make it purple? Don't worry about the purple. Right? Can you rearrange the order? Okay, no, that's important. Boom, 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 boom. Can you do that? Cool. You like that? Good. What happens next? When you click this button, it goes to this screen. Okay, next screen. Boom, boom, boom. Fix that. We can do a lot of that stuff with them actually in the room.
So basically just like do the layout.
That's Agile. Okay? And then we, the analysts, look at those forms and go, what kind of data do I have here? We literally just pick all the pieces off the form and say, here's a list. I'm going to give you the same thing because Lyle's going to help me make a list of the system that he wants, of all the data he wants to capture. I can pull those off the prototype forms. Build my database from it. I know it works because it's everything they said they needed on the forms. So you can see that this is kind of, I don't even want to say chicken and egg. You can do it either way. And it can be effective.
So basically it's whichever one works.
Whichever one your company decides they want to use. Why are there 6 different approaches or 8 different approaches to the systems development lifecycle? Because one size is not fit all. Same thing with all of us. Still data because that's where we started. Agile is new, as in last 10 years or something like that.
Less people who actually are more familiar or comfortable with the Agile approach.
It's so common now that it's not so, it's 10 years, it's not young anymore. So it's another common one, but it depends on the business. Isaac.
In the example of the book, he used teachers in a field and they were teaching multiple subjects.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up creating like say a teacher taught 3 different subjects, he created 3 different entries in the field for the teacher.
Yeah.
And so I want to know why that was necessary, because wouldn't that just make it redundant?
No, actually, it's removing the redundancy, but wrong book. Give me a page. You had it, didn't you?
Yeah, I'll have the page.
Wasn't it in, didn't you? I thought you had pages in your email. Maybe not.
No,
Chapter 4, 7?
7. It's somewhere around 212 or 216.
216? We'll try that. Here we have a instructor's table. And all the standard stuff that you have with instructors. Notice all the prefixes, INST. Optional. It's really a database designer preference on whether you put those prefixes. Can you see that all right with the lights, or should I get rid of them? All right, Sam? Yeah, you don't have to study it or memorize anything. Those INST prefixes, why? Because there's probably a student first name. How do I tell them apart if I call them both first name? Easy. Which table are we talking about? Doesn't matter. That's a preference whether you put that INST, which is a prefix for this table, on the front of the field names or not. I don't usually do it. But here they have categories taught. Your first clue that something's wrong in a relational database, in a third normal form database, is plural. If it's one field whose name is plural, that's a multi-value field. In this case, I don't know if the D and the T and the P are each a separate code, are they? I don't remember. But let's pretend. I can't because there's 2 S's here. But, oh, I'm sorry. Here's Kira in there twice. What? Kira's an instructor twice? That's not good. 3 times. Thank you. That's not good. That's redundant data, right? Her address is in there 3 times. I think if I went back a couple of pages, it would be even different than this. That's a multi-value field. There, that's what I'm looking for. Here is only in once. Perfect. But categories taught. Not perfect. This is a multi-value. Each of these is a category, right? Each of those is a category. That's not good. Because if I'm looking for all the teachers who teach in the SS field, whatever that is, it's embedded inside that. It's much more difficult to find. And if she stops teaching it, it's much more difficult to edit. But that's an example of a multi-value field in general. They're no-nos, doesn't mean I don't have them. I do. It's called lazy. And it's my database. So how do we resolve this? I think he goes about it a long way, but what really happens is we take this multiple value field and it becomes its own table. Joni asked me about validation tables. Shouldn't I have a validation table saying here's the list of valid categories? Probably. But just pull that out. That's not about instructors. Instructors have phone numbers and stuff. But categories is its own table. And then ultimately, somewhere down the road, okay, let's draw it. Let's practice our ERD skills here. Here's my instructors table. And here's my categories table. Remember the way I do this. Start with the word one. One instructor teaches how many categories? Many. We don't say 3, 4. I don't use that. Those 3 categories that you helped me list before. 1 to 1, 1 to many, many to many. That's it. Go 4s, go 3s. He cares. I don't. Many. One category. One category is taught by how many instructors? Many, got a couple of double S's up there, right? Uh-oh. How do we resolve this? Already told you. Put one in the middle. What do we call those? Oh, specialties, maybe? Which teacher teaches this? Taught categories. This table can be hard to name. But what's inside there? This is also what happens, by the way. The many to many becomes two one to manys. And the manys are always on that one in the middle. Almost always. So if this is the child, here's the two parents to that one table. We take the primary key from here, the instructor primary key, and the category primary key, and no, I wouldn't abbreviate them like that in the real world. We put them both in here. And all you see in here is a bunch of numbers. Instructor number 173 teaches category number 7. What the heck's that mean? Humans don't look in there, remember? Humans don't look in there. You will write queries that says, give me a list of all the categories that Steve teaches. Instructor number 173 teaches. Don't give me the numbers, give me the names. On the screen it says, Kira Bentley teaches DTP, SS, WP. How it's stored behind the scenes is gross sometimes.
Which is a pair table in that.
Both. This table has two parents. And like the real world, you can have more than two. We call them step tables? No. But you can have more than two parents. One table can be a parent to many, many children. There's no rules for how many times you can be related to a different table. No rules. And we'll see all kinds of unique looking structures before we're done.
So to avoid a multi-valued field like that is to
Yes.
create additional tables that link together then?
Yep. If you pull those out and make it a separate table, then now I have two tables, right? I have the instructor table and the category table. I do the standard relationship stuff. What's the relationship? Many to many.
So if possible, basically avoid many to many.
You can't avoid. You cannot. You cannot do anything but deal with them. You can't avoid them. It's not my fault that one teacher teaches many categories and one cat. That's just the way it is. You can't avoid these things unless you leave stuff out. So that's going to be a many to many relationship. We're not doing that. Sorry, doesn't work that way. You can't avoid them. You must resolve them. Must. This is the resolution. There's another table. Back to Andy's question, we built another table called specialties that maybe only has two fields in it. 173 teaches 5. Gross. Yeah, but humans don't look in there, so it doesn't matter. And by the time we're done, we turn that back into Kira teaches DTP, teaches SS. Why is that abbreviated, by the way? I hope they recognize all those abbreviations. And I go, oh yeah, everybody knows this. Until the next supervisor comes in, until the next new instructor comes in, so we're putting you in the DTP SS categories. Huh? Yeah, give them a week, they'll know. Okay, that's fine. But I'm not a big fan of these abbreviations, but there's some we know pretty well, right? States. Except me, I'm stupid. MS. Mississippi or Missouri? I think it's Mississippi. Mississippi, but that gets a little confusing sometimes.
It kind of ties into one of my.
Good.
So, multi-value, similar to like.
No. Yes, multi-value. I'm sorry.
Well, it'd be similar to when they talk in the book about when you're designing your table, some people want to do a miscellaneous category. That's really frowned upon because
Yeah,
multi things.
but you know what? You can't talk them out of it usually. They may not like it. You can try to talk them out of it, but just about every one of the tables in Lions Camp has comments. It's the stuff we want to write down that we don't really have a place for.
So that's common.
I make them comments, yeah. What's the difference between that and miscellaneous? Not much. And they put all kinds of stuff in there, but they can't really search it. And they don't want to search it. It's just, these are extra comments about this camper. Maybe they hate shaving. Well, I don't have a likes shaving category in the database. I just don't. right? And they don't want one. It's just a couple of people that hate shaping, so they type it in there. When they look at their data on the screen, they see it. Even if they print it, because they often print this stuff and give them to counselors. So counselors have a book they carry around. I'm hoping the web version gets rid of the book and the counselors start carrying around their cell phones instead and go flip, flip, flip. Here's my cabin information. That'd be nice. So, where was I? What was Tyler? What was your question one more time?
Miscellaneous subjects.
Yeah, you can try to talk them out of it, but sometimes you just can't help it. It's a catch-all. Stuff we didn't anticipate and we don't need a field for. We have 3,000 campers in the database. Only 2 of them hate shaving. That's not worth a field.
So where would you put which table would you put the comments in?
It's a comment. Sometimes it's both. I have comments in probably 10 tables. These are comments about campers. These are comments about medications. These are comments about camper medications.
So you just put a comment anywhere pretty much.
Yeah, and that's what I call them. Comments, 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 comments.
Because they don't go to the, I mean, it doesn't really affect the data anyway, so you just put a comment section.
I can print it. I can look at it whenever I want. That's what I want.
So it just stays on the board.
Yeah.
You're saying comments use to set the field policy.
Correct.
You don't have to do
Another way to do it though is comments.
Table.
Is a table of comments. And then those usually get categorized somehow. This is a comment about campers for camper number 1 made by counselor number 7. Right, because if you put comments in there, we can't tell who did it. But the answer is yes. Again, how do you want it?
So in other words, you can have like multiple comments, several keys.
And all these tables link to that comments table, but then it's still not hard
It
to
sounds
pull off.
simpler to just like put a comment.
Everything's simpler when you can just, this is simple, right? Isn't this simple? Sure, I can do this in Excel. But modifying it, adding a new category isn't terribly easy. Finding the camper or the teachers who teach certain categories is not easier. There's reasons for all this. Remember the set theory, first predicate order stuff that we didn't want to explain? That's why we do a lot of this, because at some point it's going to come back to bite us if we don't do it right. I don't have great examples of where it fails because I always do it right, so it never fails. Most of the time. Nathan? Forgot to go sideways. Do that next. Nothing left? 5?
We'll say this, I read the wrong chapter.
Yeah, I'm definitely not answering it.
It's actually from chapter 6, so it's just in a lot of the interview process and
Okay.
a lot
Yeah.
in chapter 6.
Guess why it wasn't on the reading list?
Because there's a lot of reading.
Because there's a lot, and it's its own topic, and it doesn't apply to this class quite so much. In systems, we might talk a little bit more about how we gather this.
79 pages of interview.
And it'll be a nice resource in the systems class if we talk about that. But that interviewing stuff, guess who it's not done by? Geek programmers, yeah, geek networkers. We don't let them anywhere near customers. No, we do. But they don't usually coordinate those interviews. They don't design questionnaires because that's what analysts get paid to do.
That's why they get money.
That's why they get the big money. Ben, you got a question? Steve,
Wait, I had a question.
you did.
I still get a question.
I'm sorry, go for it.
Of course I got a question. Actually, I came up with while working in the real world, if a company you work for is using a database that seems to be outdated or has duplicate fields, how do you go about presenting that to them to allow them to know that there's a problem?
If there's a database administrator, that's what you talk to. If there's duplicate data, redundant data, et cetera, there's probably no database administrator.
Isn't that what
If there is, then you might want to go to the database administrator and say, you better fix this, and if you don't, you better explain to me why, and be brave if you want to be. Database administrators usually have a lot of power. That's another 6-figure salary position in most places. They're doing it for a reason. My approach, if I were you, even if I were me, would be, I don't understand why you're doing this. In school, the almighty Volcker said, no, 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 no. And the database administrator said, yeah, I heard of that guy, forget about him. Okay, but can you explain to me why he was wrong?
Pretty famous then.
Can you explain to me why he was wrong? or why in this case it doesn't apply. If they can, then you learn from that. If you don't agree with it, then there was an adage I learned in the Air Force when I was a second lieutenant. If you don't like the way it's done, shut up and do it the same way, and when you get to be the captain, then change it. Okay? So if you don't like the way it's done, but the database administrator is explaining it to you, and you're going, he has theory, I don't agree, it's not your job to change it. If you want to, if it's critical and you want to fight that battle and go over her or his head and try to get it changed and say the database administrator is wrong, try. I mean, there are lieutenants who tell generals about what their colonel's doing. Probably stay lieutenants forever, but not all of them. Sometimes you got to call those colonels to the colonel. But that's who I would go to first.
No, no, part B.
Part B.
Thank you, Chastity.
I answered and get more questions. Okay.
If you know someone who was using, as what the book referred to as the paper-based database, though, how would you encourage them to switch to a new method?
Offer to write the program for them. Offer to build the database for them for free. That's called a public service organization, a nonprofit. They don't have IT staffs. You're reading chapter 2, many of you in the systems class, and we talk about these IT staffs. They don't have the money to outsource. They don't have the money to buy $500 software packages, and they don't know how to do it themselves. So if you see that, what are you doing in there? Volunteering. Good. Now you have a new skill, and they're aching for it. This year we had 5 projects to choose from for our systems class. Every one of them was nonprofit. 3 of them were Lions. One was Lions Camp. One was Lions Foundation. I'm sorry, 2 of them were Lions Foundation donations. We did Boys and Girls Club truancy abatement. And another one that one of these students brought in where his dad is a network administrator for a nonprofit and they want to keep track of all their hardware, so kind of similar, not really. And there was another one that was about book management and all different chapters. It almost sounded like a publishing house thing. That one didn't go very far. So that was 5, but every year there's more. My Sunday school class, this 7 years ago now, I think, we did at my church, people drop off their kids when they go to church into the daycare place. This is a huge church. How do I know the right person's picking that child up? Or there's a child left. I knew we forgot something. So excited about the football game. Oh, wait, oh, jeez. We'll get next. But how do we keep track of it? How do we make sure that the right person's picking them up? We built them a system.
We got a program like that for
And all the little kids, when they walked in, if they didn't have one, got a nameplate. And I heard that later on, they actually expanded it and barcoded that thing. All right. So the parent comes up and said, that one's mine. Okay. Bring them over. You take that thing, you slide it on a barcode reader, and all the family pictures come up. Yep, take them. They wanted that security because they were afraid of somebody walking in there and pulling a kid saying, that's my niece. My sister's over there getting a cup of coffee and all the kids. They did not even want to think about that. So we built that one. I mean, there's always something. And they're so cool, and there's nothing like writing real world software for real people that want real stuff done versus those lame things that Boker's making us do for the first 3 semesters.
So for the Lions Camp,
Yep.
you have to sign like the students that work on it, or maybe the parents of the campers, they have to sign some kind of release.
What you normally will sign is the team members, if you're looking at live data. And I showed them only innocuous live data like names and addresses and stuff. I wasn't worried about people going to track, ooh, you're going Lions Camp. There's limits, but if you're getting into credit card numbers and you're getting into phone numbers and the medications, the HIPAA laws, the health laws say you can't tell me what medications he takes unless I have a need to know. Right. You can, the team can sign a form saying, I will not take any of the data that I have. Here's a standard form. I had to sign it. I don't know where they put it. They got it somewhere. But yeah, that's an issue. If you're looking at live data, when we build ours, I don't need to see live data. We can create our own real easy. Some of my favorite programs are just programs that generate random data, so I can fill a database with 5,000 records to test it. It's just junk data. The right programs to generate data. These are fun. Coming over there. Steve?
On page 222, kind of what Lyle was asking about duplicate fields on in another field, in another table, excuse me.
Okay.
It talks about sometimes those are necessary because they're called reference fields, and some people hold that the table must contain every field that a report is going to contain, so they'll have those extra.
So what's supposed to be extra?
Those two that are up there in gray.
These fields duplicate the.
Use another local.
Try.
Yeah, you know.
This is 223. 222, they talk about it, but we can't see it. These fields duplicate the manufacturer phone and website fields in the manufacturer's table. Yeah, good point. Why are they in here? Why does an instrument have a phone number? That's my first question. That sounds a little weird. Does an instrument have a website? No. And no, these are in the wrong place. There's something wrong.
They call them duplicate fields to provide reference information.
Yeah, that's nice. If this is a report, that's fine, but it's still goofy to me.
Okay.
You know, if you want to know about this instrument,
That's what those things are.
is this a database or a report?
Yeah. So now they're trying to cram everything that's going to be on a report in one table.
That's called bad design.
Okay, that's what the book called it.
Yeah. Now, one of the places where I deviate from Hernandez is when you assign fields to tables. Right. We figure out all these tables, but I don't have much in there for fields, just some primary keys. Hernandez, very early in the process, in my mind at least, starts assigning fields to tables. I think that's wrong. When you look at my 10 steps, you'll see it's like step 7 out of 10. We finally say, okay, the instructor first name goes in the instructor table. Duh. Yeah, but we don't even think about it till then. There's a reason for that. Because when you get to step 7, every field that you pick off that's still on the field list that Lyle's going to give us, every field that's left goes into one and only one table, which makes it a whole lot easier, I think. Because you just have to figure out what's the best table to put this in. Usually it's obvious. Usually you could have figured it out, like Hernandez talks about, 3 days before. Usually. But some fields, like GPA, or course grade. Pam gets an A in this course. Where do I put that? Pam? No. Because how many grades does she potentially have? 16, 17, 20, right? If she takes all our classes, she'll have 20 grades. And we put those all in the Pam record? So she got an A in RDD. Put it in RDD. No, there's 24 of you. I don't want that. Where's it go? That's a many relationship, right? Students and classes. One class has many students, one student takes many classes, many to many. There's gotta be something in between. And Hernandez hasn't figured that out yet. So if he's putting the grade in someplace, this doesn't fit anywhere. Doesn't make sense to me. So I've got a different philosophy, I think. Did I answer that, or I kind of cut you off 3 times? So
Oh, okay.
I got it. Okay. Okay, got one left? Clean job. Okay.
On page 199, Hernandez, there's this little gray box where he talks about the importance of using pen and pencil and paper and stay away from the RDD and MS programs in the design phase.
Okay. In the design phase.
Right.
This box, that was what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering why.
In the following examples, I ask you to use sheets of paper for specific procedures. Using paper helps you avoid the temptation of using the RDBMS program. Is building the actual database, so that's Access, right? Where do you do this in Access? You don't. You can't do this in Access. And what he's trying to get you to avoid here is jumping right in and build tables. In Volker's world, you can't build tables unless you got this diagram. Now, I might use Visio to make that pretty instead of squiggling it on the board. But I kind of agree with him. I like the whiteboards because then I can erase and get my hands dirty and we can change our mind and we can do that. But if I'm really good at Visio, I can do it there too. Move this over here, disconnect that, connect it over here. I can do it in Visio. But stay out of the database. Don't start building tables. 10-step design. There's no access. There's no MySQL or my 10-step design. This is all before you even touch the RDBMs. What he's basically saying is people who aren't really used to this stuff, they just want to jump right into the database, build tables, throw fields in, and hope they get them all in the right place. Sound familiar? Like programming logic beginning students who write code and then design. The intermediate students would never do that. But
it's your mind knowing what you want instead of like.
It's your mind knowing what you want, but is it designed right? And I promise you, after we get done with the 3-tier model, your mind won't be able to wrap your head around it. Won't be able to wrap around it until you design it. Never happens. Never happens. We don't want it to happen here, is what he's saying. We don't want it to happen. And I agree. Stay out of the database program until you've got a solid design. The users want that too. What does this look like in Access? I don't know that. I don't know that. Why do you care? You're never going to see it again in Access because we have this front end that's going to keep you out of Access and don't screw stuff up like you're doing right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here getting paid this much. I hope. Matt.
Okay, so on page 185 and 186.
Backwards in time here. 185. Okay.
He talks about, is it 185?
Yeah.
Keep going down, there's a final table. He says something along the lines of you're supposed to make a final table by adding 2 things that are not in the preliminary table.
You mean the type and the description?
Yeah, he says you're supposed to add 2 things that are not in the preliminary table. If you look at the preliminary table, he's got courses in both of them.
Right.
Why?
Courses, this is a preliminary and this is a final. That means it made it into the final list. All right, but I think the 2 things he's talking about are the type of table and its description. I think that's the 2 things he's talking about. All right, because he doesn't, does he show us on the next page for some reason? Oh, my browser's just too small here. I had the page button, where'd it go? There it is. Yeah, the 2 things he's talking about is what type of table is it and give me a description of it. Forget it. I don't need a description of the table. It ought to be pretty obvious by the name, except for these linking tables in between. And I know they're linking tables because they always look like this. I don't think I needed this. I want that picture. If it's me, I'm going back to Lions Camp. I haven't been there in a year. You know how much I remember about it. CAMP, Lions, there's some cabins, I think. Oh, yeah, forgot the rest. I need the, that's our first place I go, ERD. And if I'm adding something new to the, somebody has to, life cycle, just not created, they exactly right method. Agile, greatest fat, you're hired, we're just something else. You're going to have to, you yourself, questions? What? Table.
2.
Answer to the different. Have so many student night, more than 2, your number maybe. Social skills. The table is relationship. Position to the relational data. Worse. Have to split. Yes, box. Number 2, new ones. That's field of the. I have a desk. Intercept that front end. I'm going to learn how to. Your stuff. My ER. Making stuff. They build. Find. Size diagrams are on. Good job on the lecturing. Volker's lame, is that what you said?
No.
Stop. It's unreal.